Let me ask you about the £20 a week uplift in universal credit. That is one of the measures that the IFS have said has been very helpful in this economic bounce back. Why is it being cut?
It was one part of a very large package of measures that we put in place at the start of this crisis when we were facing the forecast that we talked about earlier. And like many other things in the package, as we get through the crisis, it will end because it was always meant to be temporary. That was the clear intention.
But the furlough
when it
scheme was
announced.
Meant to end before it actually did, and the restrictions were supposed to end before they did. Things can be extended if they need to be. Well,
no, they're not, because all of the things that you just mentioned have been extended. These things were meant to end before. They're not. They've all been extended, but they're ending in September, well after the end of the restrictions. So there's actually a suitable cushion and buffer there. But I think actually the most important point is, and I think most people realise, you can't carry on crisis interventions forever. We can't have a furlough scheme at that cost forever, clearly. So these things are right for a crisis. They're not right for long term. But actually taking a step back, what's the most important way to help people? I fully believe that we want to help those who are most vulnerable in society. I'm proud that our actions over the last year have delivered that. I said I would do that in my first press conference in this job, and we have delivered it. But the best way to help people, I think, and the government believes, is to help them get into work and get well-paid jobs. And we are throwing literally literally throwing the kitchen sink at supporting people into jobs. And that is not just saying, oh, off you go. It's increasing the national living wage by £350 a year this year for someone who's a full-time worker. It means providing with the opportunity to get their first level 3 qualification, which tragically 11 million adults in this country don't have. That's worth £3,500. That's supporting people, but it's supporting people in a way that we know is going to have the biggest long-term impact on their lives and on their families. And we passionately believe that's the right thing to do, and we are doing it.
What we did have yesterday in the past 24 hours, though, was confirmation that the £20 uplift to universal credit is coming to an end. Just explain that decision, because there are a number of people, including colleagues within your own party, Ian Duncan Smith, suggesting that it was a way by which people could live with some dignity. Why remove it, and why remove it now?
It was always meant to be a temporary measure, along with lots of other things that we've done. We've been dealing with an unprecedented crisis that required us to do some extraordinary things. But of course, those things can't carry on forever, whether it's the furlough scheme or other things. So universal credit is part of that overall package of support, but it's just one thing. I think the focus we have is trying to get as many people as possible into work and into well-paid work. So what you've seen, the national living wage has gone up this year. That's worth £350 to someone working full-time on the national living wage, and we're providing huge number of opportunities for people to get new skills, to upskill themselves, to earn more, and to get better jobs. The Prime Minister's lifetime skills guarantee ensures that everyone will have the chance to find a better future for themselves, and that's what we need to focus on now that the economy is reopening, businesses are booming, and we want to get people into work.
Sure, it is, as you say, but a part of a package of assistance for people. But it is a fairly fundamental and significant part of it. I mean, during the liaison committee yesterday, the Prime Minister had it pointed out to them, if you go ahead with this cut, unemployment support will be, in real terms, at its lowest point for 30 years. That's not something any Chancellor should be proud of.
Well, what I can say is support for people finding new jobs or better jobs or getting new skills is probably higher than it has ever been. So there are currently 10 million adults in the UK who don't have a level 3 qualification. For the first time, the Prime Minister outlined last year, the government will fully fund those adults to get that qualification. That's worth £3,500 roughly. And if you get a qualification like that, your chance of getting a job or earning more in a new job goes up significantly. So that's just one example of the things we're doing to help people. We're giving businesses £3,000 to take on new apprentices and paying 95% of the training costs for that apprentices to create opportunities for people there. And I think that's the right approach. The best way long-term to help people is to help them get into well-paid work. And we are throwing the kitchen sink at that as part of our plan for jobs. And we did it early. I said a year ago today we outlined the plan. It's worked over the last year and it continues to work, and we should have confidence that it will help drive our recovery and help provide people with the opportunities they need.
And as things stand, 2.2 million people receiving universal credit right now are in work. They're not off work. 2.2 million are currently in work. Is there not something structurally, significantly wrong with our labour market when you can have in excess of 2 million people receiving this form of benefit while still turning up and having a job?
Well, we've also done some other things to improve the generosity of our welfare system in other ways.
Let's talk about universal credit. Let's talk about universal credit. 2.2 million people are in receipt of it whilst working.
Well, hang on. They're also in receipt of other things, and actually we put an extra £1 billion a year into something called local housing allowance, which helps those people who are struggling with their rent bills. So over a million people will benefit from around £600 a year from that. And for those that are in work, as you say, the best way to help them is to make sure that their wages rise. That's why our increase of the national living wage is important. That's worth 350 quid for someone full-time on the national living wage. And that's why giving them the opportunity to get new skills and then earn more in the same job or a different job is really important. And that's why the lifetime skills guarantee, as I said, that's worth £3,500 when someone gets one of those qualifications or does an apprenticeship as part of their work to gain some new skills. That is the right long-term way to help people, and that's where we're investing our money.
Let me put the point that Lord Karen Bill-Moria made on the programme earlier. He is having to self-isolate along with many, many millions of people now, despite not being unwell and despite testing negative for COVID because of the pinging that's going on around the app. How much is that self-isolation costing the economy, and is it a legal requirement to isolate if you are pinged by the app?
Well, you're right, and I appreciate people's frustrations about this. And I know, Karen, I didn't know he'd been pinged, but I can imagine he's very frustrated about that. But it won't keep him from being as highly energetic as he is in representing business to the government. And now, look, there are two different systems, and I've had a chat with the Health Secretary about this yesterday. There are two different systems. There's the NHS test and trace system, and then there's the app, and the app is slightly different. And I think most people's concerns and frustrations rest with the app, which accounts for the majority of the contact isolation. And what the Health Secretary is doing he's asked for advice on the app so that we can see if there's a proportionate and balanced approach
the point
one can take with that.
If there's no legal requirement to isolate if you've been pinged by the app, then people can just ignore it, can't they?
Well, as you said, they are different systems. The Health Secretary has asked for advice on the app and is trying to.
Have you been pinged by it? Do you have it on your phone?
I do, of course. I have the app on my phone. But the right thing to do is to find a balanced and proportionate approach. This has been a very helpful tool in our toolkit over the past several months in helping to keep cases down. I haven't got from hundreds of thousands from memory.
So
I think it's half a million.
It's preventing people from being able to go to work. It's stopping people who are well entering the economy again.
Yes. Of course it's frustrating. I mean, gosh, there are many things that have been frustrating over the last 12 to 18 months, right? Because we've been living with this virus, and everyone is having to make sacrifices to try and suppress the spread of it until we can get to the point where we've vaccinated enough people that we can safely reopen. We are at that point now. Look, is this extra few weeks frustrating? I know it is. The Health Secretary's asked for some advice and to look at what we should do with the app. But I hope people can step back and look at the big picture, think where we were just a few months ago, and here we are on the verge of having the vast majority of our freedoms back. And for businesses in particular, which is why I'm here to talk to you, that is an enormously positive step, because we had this plan that we outlined a year ago. We stuck to the plan. The plan is working. There are fewer people out of work than were feared. Businesses are growing again. They're hiring more people. That's what we need to do. And with the removal of the restrictions like the 1 meter plus and the limits on gatherings, that last bit of what was holding back the brakes that were on the economy can be lifted a bit, and that gives me confidence that we can get everyone back to work and have the economy growing nicely again.
And in a
the delay to the change in rules around self-isolation, there has been something of a furious backlash from the business community. Well, in fact, even from your own party. Ian Duncan Smith says he won't be going to the pub because there's no point in doing so, because you're going to get pinged. Julian Metcalf, the founder of Pret and Itsu, said that it is completely and utterly mental. Richard Walker, the boss of Iceland, said, what an S show.
But I appreciate people's frustration with this. It's part of what I call the Prime Minister called a balanced approach. We want to make sure that we proceed with the appropriate degree of caution. And I think what people hopefully can look at is the enormously positive news of the restrictions being removed. So whether you're a hospitality business, You can see now that the 1 metre plus rule is going. It was one of the biggest things that businesses talked to me about. The restrictions on the number of people coming together to eat at a restaurant or go out will also be removed when we move to this step. These are big changes that mean we have a huge degree of freedom back, and I appreciate people's frustration, but I'd also urge them to look at the positives as well.
But just in terms of test and trace, in terms of finding people who've come into close contact with people who test positive for COVID-19 and would be required to self-isolate, we've gotten rid of the requirement, or we will get rid of on July the 19th, the requirement for people to check into venues, the QR codes. We know, it's been reported anecdotally, and it's in the papers today, that people are deleting the NHS app en masse. How will we find people that need to self-isolate without the ability to track people moving in and out of hospitality venues if they're not using the NHS app?
Well, I trust people to exercise appropriate responsibility and judgment, and I know that they will continue to do so, as they have done over the last year and a half. But look, I've spoken to the Health Secretary about this, and he's aware of the frustrations that people have around this. And what I'd say is that we have two different systems for the test and trace. We have obviously the NHS one, and then we also have the app. And I know most people's concerns rest with how the app is working, and the Health Secretary is aware of that. The app accounts for the majority of people who need to isolate, I understand, on the numbers, and he's looking at what the most appropriate, balanced and proportionate approach to isolation is in these circumstances.
The IFS, your description of the state of the economy after the IFS describing jobs and earnings holding up, how would you describe how it's going?
Well, a year ago today, we outlined our plan for jobs, and the good news is we stuck to that plan, and the plan is definitely working. I was out and about yesterday in the West Midlands seeing businesses, and everywhere you go, you see the plan in action. So new young kickstarters starting their new roles, ending up in full-time jobs, apprentices learning new skills and getting paid more, people having come back from furlough, delighted to be back at work, their job saved, and businesses that have received the support we've provided over the year and have got through it and are now looking to expand, grow and take on new staff. So I think we should have confidence in the future. I think the signs are good compared to the absolutely dismal forecast that we were seeing last year and people's fears of millions of people unemployed. I think we've done a really good job of making sure that that has not happened, and we can look forward to the future with confidence.
Andy Haldane described it as going gangbusters. Do you agree?
Well, Andy's always very positive, and I think there are reasons to be so. I'm particularly focused on jobs. I've always said that jobs is my number one economic priority, and a year ago today, people were forecasting that unemployment would rise to 12%. I mean, that would be 4 million people unemployed. The forecast now are for unemployment to peak at less than half of that. That's 2 million jobs that have been saved. The last 5 months, every month we've put more and more people into work, which is great to see. If companies are keen to hire more people, consumer confidence is back to pre-crisis levels, businesses are keen to invest. So look, I feel cautiously optimistic that as we reopen, the economy is moving up a gear, and we should have confidence about that.
What about
since the anniversary, just a year though since you launched your plan for jobs? See what I did there? Something you're celebrating today as well, I imagine.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's right. A year ago today, we launched the plan for jobs, and I'm delighted that we stuck to that plan, and the plan is working. I was out and about all day yesterday in the West Midlands, in Wolverhampton, and every business I went to, I could see our plan in action. New kickstarters, young people starting their new jobs, doing so well, apprentices learning new skills, people who've been brought back from furlough successfully, and businesses that now, having got through the crisis with our support, are looking to expand and grow. The unemployment numbers are far lower than we feared a year ago when I stood up and outlined the plan for jobs. So I am absolutely delighted that it is working, and it doesn't end here. We've got support that continues throughout the year, and we want to drive our recovery forward now, and that's what I know we can achieve.
Know that people are receiving their letters to start paying back their bounce back loans now, and the Department for Business have said that the taxpayer could be spending £27 billion in fraud or credit losses. Somewhere between 35% and 60% of loans might not be repaid. Do you recognise those numbers?
Look, those are estimates that people put out previously. Let's see what happens. I probably am a bit more optimistic, but it's early days. What I would say, though, is for all the businesses, and hopefully there are some that are listening, if you took out a bounce back loan, over a million businesses have, you've had a year where you haven't had to pay anything back, you've not paid any interest. That's what we decided to do. Now, you've got a 5-year loan at a very attractive low rate of 2.5%. You should talk to your bank about something called pay as you grow.
Yes.
And what that means is, if you want, automatically, you can change your 5-year bounce back loan into a 10-year bounce back loan that will cut your monthly repayment. That will cut your monthly repayment by almost half. You can also take 6-month payment holidays or interest-only periods. We created that program to help businesses ease the stress on their cash flow.
You shouldn't be losing 35% of those. People have the opportunity, as you've described, to pay it back over a longer period of time, less money over the month. So much more should be coming back into the exchequer than that.
Well, look, let's see what happens. But remember, this was deliberately a crisis intervention. Of course, we're not going to get any penny back of those. That otherwise the private banking system could have provided these loans. But in a crisis where the government had to step in and provide support to businesses, we obviously took the unprecedented step of doing 100% guarantee loans because it was the only way to get cash out to very small businesses. It was the right thing to do. But I'm confident that with the pay-as-you-grow option, that will help many businesses get through.
Chancellor, do you think that the school day should be extended to help pupils catch up?
I think that's something that Well, I think that's something that obviously we'll look at in the spending review. You know, we're collecting the evidence on that and having a look at it. But what I would say is people should know we remain incredibly committed to our children's education. Over the 3 years that we're in, an extra £14 billion is going into the school system. We announced that before this crisis even, to get per pupil funding back up to what are historically very high levels.
You'll be looking at it. Yeah.
That's worth £800 per pupil. People should know that. On top of that, we've announced £3 billion to help children catch up with the lost learning and ushering in a new age of tutoring in this country, which is something that we know, all the evidence tells us, makes the biggest difference to children. I think your listeners would want us to be spending money on things that we know make a difference. We know tutoring does. We're investing billions of pounds in it, and people should know we're hugely committed to our children.
And very, very